let's start with this idea of plan renewal, and you can go through and talk about some of the other terminology. I think it's really important to lead with what the definition is, or what the technical, I guess, NDIS name is.
Yep.
And definition. But then also, Carolyn, I really wanted you to share and help people understand what some other names they might be hearing on Facebook, for example. We know Facebook groups are a really key way that people learn and absorb information about the schemes. So if you could tie those two in as we're going along, that would be really helpful.
Really helpful.
Yeah,
I will do my best because language changes quite quickly.
It does. It does.
So one thing that we understand one day often has a different meaning the next day. So what we're seeing at the moment, I guess within the agency, is that we're moving from what they would have had as their period of transition into their period of continuous improvement. So they've already started flagging changes in language from reasonable and necessary to fair and equitable. What we probably expect at this point in time is that the systems behind the scenes are still going to be fairly similar in amongst how some of those things will react. So a plan renewal is typically the same plan that you had before, duplicated. And that's what we as a community understand that to be.
Okay.
From an agency's perspective, it is, except for some of the things that shouldn't be renewed every year. So if you've had some expensive assistive technology, so you've had a wheelchair funded or something, you're not going to get a second.
It's a one-off, right? It's a one-off.
Yeah, a one-off. We're also seeing some stuff in some of the capacity building spaces where, again, the families have expected that would get duplicated, but they were put into the plan as a single year sort of thing. So we are seeing some things where there is a little bit of a misunderstanding.
Are you talking, when you say capacity building, are you talking about things like therapy, or are you talking about maybe some funding in, around support to make friends or get out in the community, participation? Can you just explain which one you might be talking about?
So we're seeing that in both. So if funding has been put into a plan, say in year one, so this is the year that we're just about to review, and there was funding in the therapy budget for functional assessments, that funding won't get duplicated as part of that plan renewal. So we're actually seeing a bit of a reduction in there. But again, it's not clearly stated up front. So it's a little bit around understanding what your plan has and how your plan was built and what was expected from that, as to, I guess, an indication of what funding will get duplicated in that plan renewal sort of phase. And the same with some of that CB social or education sort of, so the school leavers funding is again there for 1 or 2 years. And they may sort of come out of that plan. So we are seeing where, I guess, communities' understanding of a renewal, which is, exactly the same thing, is not necessarily being what's happening on the ground. And that's typically the reason why that is. So the agency has funded things that they've expected to only put in for a year. And they've removed.
And that may have not been really clearly understood when it was delivered the first time. That's interesting. I think that's a really good point to note, isn't it? And when they say, so an example, this comes up and gets quoted as LAC saying this, LAC saying this on the phone a lot recently. They and families have said to me, the LAC called and said to me, do I want a rollover? Or do I want to go to plan review? And they're encouraging me to have a rollover. So first of all, is a rollover anything different than what you've just explained? And what's happening with that? I'm not sure if that's a direct quote or whether people are interpreting the language.
The language is the same. Look, so plan renewal, rollover, extension are all kind of the same. So a rollover and a plan renewal are pretty much identical. So you'll encounter potentially that same issue. We've also had a thing called a plan extension for the last couple of months that's popped up, where there hasn't been able to be a planning meeting in an appropriate amount of time. They've actually extended the plan. So rather than give you a new start date as well as an end date, so a plan renewal or a rollover will give you a new plan with a new start date, new end date. Plan extension will keep the original start date and will extend out that end date. And as a result of doing that, you actually still get access to some of that unused funding that was previously in there. They're not offered to very many people. It was flagged by the agency as sort of being a point in time through sort of May, June, when they were trying to do some other things. But that will be one of those, I guess, things that we see through some of the Facebook pages where people are going, oh, but I got a whole year's worth of funding and I've still got access to this. They met a certain criteria to enable that to happen, where other people are being told a rollover, and they're either getting exactly the same plan again, or where there've been some individual years worth of funding, a little bit of a reduction.
And I think that's the trick, isn't it, Carolyn? It's when we're hearing and we connect a lot about our individual timelines, and when we connect on Facebook and we describe what's happening, then we see so many different variations. But sort of what you've explained there is that essentially we're looking at a very similar thing where it's either renewal, except for those short-term items, and then it's just the dates are both moved, the start and the end date are both moved. An extension, which is, it's almost like it's a help to the agency to catch up. They aren't quite ready, and so they just do this. They extend it out. The ends, and then it gives them a chance. And then what you'll find is once that is renewed, it is actually the start date and the end date both move together.
Yes.
Have I got that clear?
No. That's that's clear from my perspective. Hopefully everyone else understood that. Because it does feel like one of those, you need sort of graphs and charts and things to
we need a visual.
One of the questions that you asked was if they ring up and they say, do you want this, do I say yes or do I say no? For a lot of people, if things have been going reasonably okay and they're not expecting any changes in the next sort of year or so, then a plan renewal is quite a good choice. So you don't have to go through the full planning meeting. You don't have to discuss all of everything that you sort of would at some of the other plan types.
What about evidence and reports? If you've been offered a renewal, do you start asking for progress reports from all your therapists?
So they won't, by doing the renewal, the intention is that plan is pretty well just duplicated as to what it was. So any of the information that comes through from the therapist is not going to impact that decision and won't be able to impact the decision. So the process that goes, I guess, behind the scenes from the agency side of it is that they will just duplicate it, take out the couple of things, so your wheelchairs and whatever that are not in that sort of second year, and that will be there. So if you now have a speech pathologist or someone recommending an increase in hours, this won't be the right review type for you, unless you go, actually, we're not going to do that amount of therapy. My kid's a bit therapied out, or I'm a bit therapied out, or whatever the case is.
Or heck, I can't find a therapist. And I might use a therapy assistant at a lower rate, and then it's going to work. So doing some of that mathematics, isn't it, on the side is really important. So
if you've got them, by all means submit them, but they're not going to change the result
in a renewal.
So if you've got a degenerative condition, then a plan renewal is not usually a good option for you. That's because you need some of that flexibility to have that conversation. So if your condition's deteriorated, you now have higher support needs, or are likely to in that next sort of 12-month period, then you'd probably choose a different plan type. If you or your child are going through a transition point, so
like high school,
starting high school, leaving high school, moving out of home, all of those types of things, then again, a plan renewal is unlikely to be the right thing for you. If you've had even just a minor deterioration in condition, so you've gone from being a manual wheelchair user to a power chair user, that might mean that you're better off with a different review type. And if you're looking for any of the I guess the more expensive assistive technology items, then again, so if you do need an AT or a home mods budget, then again, this is probably not the review type. So this is pretty much, we're at a stable point in life. Nothing much is really expected to happen in the next year or so. It's all going well. We have appropriate sort of support needs. And for a lot of people, that's exactly where they find themselves.